It is my extreme pleasure to introduce Clarissa Constantine. She is your go-to expert for everything having to do with test taking and test prep, like for tests like the SATs and the ACTs, and of course, final exams. So during her years at the University of Hartford in Connecticut, which is my backyard, she began what would turn into a decades-long career as a test prep coach. She's helped thousands of kids around the world navigate the college admissions process. She's joked that sometimes she finds herself playing the role of therapist more than tutor, helping the kids manage the stresses of life that naturally go along with test taking. But no matter how many young adults she has helped, she longed for a closer, more intimate relationship with her own mother. Unfortunately, that didn't happen before her mom passed away. So now Clarissa is driven to help other families avoid the heartache, the lost years, and the regret she experienced. In addition to being a test prep coach and dreaming of ways to enhance the parent-tween connection, she's also a certified life coach. She helps teens learn concepts like goal setting, self-compassion and self-esteem, mindfulness, and growth mindsets, which Elizabeth talked about. Please welcome the wonderful and impactful educator, Clarissa Constantine.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you for always making sure to pronounce my name correctly, because so many people look at it and say Constantine, and in fact, it is actually Constantine. So as we carry on, again, my focus largely in my professional experience has been with the later high school students, the juniors, the seniors, the college-bound kiddos. And honestly, even grad school bound college students. So I've worked with an array of kiddos between the ages of like 15 and 25. And I realized that so much of what Elizabeth and Deborah have already talked about is so key. It's not just about the grades. It's not just about the test scores. And yes, it's ironic from somebody who lives in a world of 400 to 1600 on the SAT or 1 to 36 on the ACT. One of the things that I see with students over the years is, or that I have seen, is that they get so obsessed not only with their grades, but with their test scores. And it's like 36 or bust, you know, or I'm never getting into college. I'm never going to have a successful career. I'm never going to this, that, or the other thing. And so I really want to come back, first of all, and talk about those two words that Elizabeth was mentioning, still and yet. I'm still working on that, or maybe I haven't gotten there yet. And one of the other things that I've found over the years is that a lot of our kids get so focused simply on college. We have a culture, particularly here in the US, where it's like, if you don't go to college, you're a failure. And so I want to work, first of all, to establish the fact that, yes, even though I live in that space, college isn't the only option for every kiddo. College isn't always the best option. Or going to college in the US straight out of high school isn't always the best option. I think at the end of the day, all of us who are in the proverbial village supporting kids, we want them to grow up to be happy, to be able to take care of themselves and their families, should they choose to have families. And so I really want to reiterate what Deborah was saying, that report cards are just one piece of the picture. I believe that especially once we get into this older high school college bound process, one of the most important goals that you as a parent or as an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, again, one of those proverbial village members, one of the most important goals I'd encourage you to set for yourself is to continue to develop the relationship with your teenager. Yes, you're the parent. Yes, you're there to be their guide. But if you've got a junior, we're in October of junior year. In 2 years, they're already going to be off at college. So a lot of the foundations of academic success and goal setting, that kind of deal, has been set with your kiddos as early as late elementary into middle and early high school. Not saying you don't want to look at those things, but continuing to work on the mindset side of things with your older high school students, making sure that they feel empowered to drive their bus, as it were, but also some of the decisions that they're going to be presented with as they get into high school, or even middle school, early high school, later high school, and on into college are going to be so much more life impacting than a report card. Conversations that sometimes are tough to have, you can start laying the groundwork for those in late elementary, middle, early high school. Again, it's not to say that there aren't any rules and that you should just be their friend. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying a lot of that's already been set. And what you can really do is work on establishing that consistency of relationship, that I love you no matter what your grades are. I love you even if you don't go to college straight away. Keep in mind that at this point, we're really working on developing kids who are going to be out of the nest in 2 years. If you came to any of our previous workshops, you know that Maya Angelou is one of my absolute favorite women of all time. And I think that sometimes as the adults in our teens' lives, we can forget that this statement is just as true for the kids in our world as it is for the rest of the people we interact with. People will forget what you said, but people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. One of the best things that you can do is ask a question, and as Elizabeth said, zip it. I don't think you used quite those words, Elizabeth, but give them the opportunity to formulate an answer. Do everything that you can so that they know that you're the trusted person they can come to when they get those tougher decisions about, sex and drugs and drinking and all of that jazz. So here's my question for you. What do jellyfish, dolphins, and helicopters all have in common? They are 3 different parenting styles as presented by Shimi Kang in her book called The Dolphin Way. Now, as we look at this, you can see there's kind of like left, right, middle of the road. The jellyfish is, I'm just trying to be your friend. I want to be your bestie. You don't have rules. You don't have goals. I don't hold any expectations of you. And what ends up happening is if this is our approach to parenting and guiding our youngsters, they kind of don't end up with a plan or a goal or any kind of focus as they get into adulthood. On the other end, we've got the helicopter parent. Perhaps we've heard this term. They're doing everything. They're filling out the college students or the college applications. They're giving the kids the time frames when they're going to be doing every aspect of their day. They don't actually role model how to take care of yourself because they're doing all of the taking care of for the student. So instead of being all the way to one side or all the way to the other, we want to aim, especially at this point, to adjust into the middle. If this has not been your habit, I very strongly encourage you to adjust into this middle realm. So for example, with the role modeling, purposeful use of role modeling for collaboration, a balanced lifestyle, and core character values. I know that I'm one who's always working to demonstrate a balanced lifestyle. I do have workaholic tendencies. And I believe that some of those workaholic tendencies came from the fact that I was the product of a family where grades were where it was at. When I graduated high school, I was 7th in my class. Freshman year, I was 1st in my class. And my mother, well-intentioned though she may have been, asked me, when I graduated 7th, she's like, well, that's good, but why weren't you 1st? Because somehow 1st wasn't good enough. So I have fallen into this pattern of work because I always was judged on results. I never learned that process basis that Elizabeth and Deborah have talked about. So especially as we go into high school, but particularly these later couple of years, I really encourage adults to take on more of a mentorship role with their kiddos rather than the nagger, okay? Because they've got to learn how to figure this out on their own ultimately. Ideally, if you were able to join us for our 3rd workshop this summer or this year that happened over the summer, you set some goals with your kiddos. If you didn't, it's not too late. But if you did set those goals, as Elizabeth and Deborah have mentioned already, you want to take the time and sit down and be like, okay, how's it working out for you? And if it's not working out for you, how do you think we could change it? And if you get the inevitable, well, I don't know how to change it, right? I would defer to what Elizabeth professes, which is, well, if you did know, what might you say? Or, well, what if it was your friend who was experiencing this kind of a challenge? How might your friend respond to this? Take a look at study habits. Take a look at time with friends. Take a look at time with work. This is an aspect like a part-time job. This is something that typically doesn't arise until 10th, 11th grade, depending upon how old your kiddo is. In most states, they can't start working until they're 15 or 16. And here's the deal. Having a part-time job teaches kids a huge amount of life skills, or a huge variety of life skills that I would argue in some ways are more important than grades. It teaches them pride in a job well done that isn't numeric, that isn't grade-based. It teaches them to work on a team, especially if you have a kiddo who maybe isn't as athletic or isn't in the band or the orchestra or chorus, where they don't participate in a team activity. Being in a job can be part of an experience of being on a team activity. It also teaches them about different kinds of expectations that an employer is going to have that a teacher isn't necessarily going to present. So it's a different aspect of things that comes up this time of year. Looking at grades or the report cards, like back to what Deborah and Elizabeth were saying, going, hey, well, who do you need to talk to? What teacher do you need to go ask for support? Do you need a tutor? Do you need outside help? Is there, maybe they just, we all hear those stories about, like, particularly it seems like in math, well, they just had a bad math teacher or a bad geometry teacher. And I don't really like the term bad. I think more that it's a personality disconnect often, but we need to help our students recognize, look, you're going to engage with people that you don't like in the real world. Let's use this as an example of how to do that. So one of the things that was really helpful with kids of this age is helping them role model, or helping them practice out loud how they can have some of these more challenging conversations. I'm not a fan, when your kids are juniors or seniors, of you taking the lead in these conversations. This really needs to be your students' responsibility. They're driving the bus. But that also doesn't mean that they necessarily know how to have these conversations. So I want to take a step back for just a second, and I want to take a look at some of the goals that you can set with your kiddos that aren't just grade-based. All right, let's talk about another skill that they might want to learn. Maybe they want to learn how to sew. Maybe they want to learn how to bowl. I personally love going bowling. It's nice to be able to throw a 12-pound ball at things and like get my aggression out. And I want to be a better bowler because I want to have fun when I go doing it, when I go out to bowl. What other hobbies do they have? Are they looking at learning to drive? What's the time frame for them being able to do that? Again, going to a part-time job, being able to have some of their own money. And you may be in a situation as the parents where you're like, I don't want my kids working. I don't want them focusing on school or on focusing on anything other than school. It's my job as their parent to provide for them financially. And I completely respect that. I do want to encourage you to consider, though, that there is something to be said for a student, again, learning some of the balance, but also earning their own money, giving themselves a sense of agency in the process. And, maybe you look at having them save up for a car instead of you completely buying it for them. There is something to be said for the idea that if we earn something ourselves, we often tend to take better care of it. So maybe they put in 50% and you put in 50%, or the agreement is that you purchase the vehicle, but then they're responsible for the car insurance because, oh, by the way, car insurance isn't exactly cheap. Maybe you can set some goals with them about going out and exercising. If you set a goal and you say, hey, I'm going to help you manage your goals for school, but I could really use your help overseeing my fitness goals or overseeing my hobby goal with something like that, then that also gives them the opportunity to play in the mentor space. And these, by the way, you can see the reference that I have here from a blogger whose blog is Tailoring the Good Life. She's actually an organizer. And Deborah, Elizabeth, and I were talking about organization early on before we actually started the recording about like having systems, having organized spaces, organized processes can help students. So I liked a lot of what this gal had to say. And here's the thing. This goes right back to what Elizabeth was talking about relative to a growth mindset. Maya Angelou said, do the best that you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. My only issue is that I believe that using the terms better and best implies judgment. And so my variation is do what you know, or do what you can rather, until you know differently. Then when you know differently, do different. So this, again, we're all works in progress. And I think a lot of us as adults, we come into interacting with our teenagers like we have it all figured out. And the reality is that we don't. So if we show our kiddos, we model the idea of like, look, I'm working on this as well. I'm working on improving my time on my next 5K or my next half marathon. And we show them these are this is my training pattern. This is my training schedule. And we allow them to help us. Then that shows them how they can later go mentor other people. I forget who it was that said earlier, how are you making your classmates feel safe and welcomed? How can you mentor them? Sometimes that's the case as well. So by modeling that for them, it gives them a chance to step up as well. Now, dialogue. This is important not only in terms of your relationship with your kiddos, but again, modeling for them how to have open dialogue with other people. We don't necessarily teach our kids how to communicate well, especially if we come into a very authoritative or authoritarian rather perspective with them. I'm the adult and I said so. How many times I heard my mom say, because I said so, and that was just the end of story. There was no dialogue, there was no conversation. And frankly, it left me feeling shut down and like my value didn't matter. My opinion didn't matter. So we want to help them learn how to have effective dialogue, not only with, between the parents and the teens, but also between the teens and their teachers, right? So Elizabeth and Deborah were talking about like, well, maybe you need to go talk to your teacher. Okay, great. But what do you say when you walk in? Is it just like mumble, mumble? This is where some of that role playing can be really helpful. So for example, teach your kiddo to ask for a time to discuss XYZ. So Mrs. Stitt, I need help with learning how to memorize this poem. When can I have 10 minutes of your time, please? So let me give you a little insight on that. Number one, it's being clear about what I need help with. If we don't model this, this turns into the inevitable, we need to talk, which never goes well in a relationship. It says, this is the topic I would like to discuss. And it sets the expectation that we don't have to have the conversation right now, but that we need to have it. And when is it a convenient time to have it? So this is something that we can model with our kiddos. Hey, Bobby, when you get your report card, we're going to have dinner. And then after dinner, we're going to review the report card together. Now, in that case, as a parent, you're saying this is what we're going to do, but you're still giving them a time frame so that they can prepare for the conversation and have a chance to pull their thoughts together. Same thing goes with interacting with their coaches or interacting with their bosses if they have a part-time job. So the second thing that I think it was Elizabeth discussed is we want to give them the opportunity to understand that if we keep the conversation in I language, it's going to be a whole lot more effective. I feel, I'm struggling with, I don't understand this yet, I'm still having challenge with, as opposed to you suck, you did, you said, blah, 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 blah. That does not encourage successful conversation. Encourage your student to take notes on the points that they want to address. I've even done this when I've had to have a serious conversation with a family member or with my husband. Here are the 3 things that I need to talk about, and here are my emotions, because I tend to shut down when I get into a more emotional conversation. And so that's a coping skill I've learned. And again, you can potentially role play with them so that they get comfortable with the words coming out of their own mouths. Humans are not born negotiators. We are not born conflict resolvers. These are skills that we can learn. So modeling that and helping them prepare for those kinds of conversations is really important. I'm also a big fan of paired journals. This is between an adult and a teenager. They're a single book, a single journal where you can write to each other. This helps channel our inner ref, as Deborah was talking about, where it allows us to receive information and process it before we have to be face to face with somebody else. So imagine, Elizabeth or Deborah was saying that sometimes the report cards are just as shocking to the parents or to the kids as they are to the parents. Sometimes writing it out and then giving it to the other person and giving the other person space to process it before they have to respond can increase and improve communication and connection significantly. So the Open the Door journal is actually a journal that I've created. It is available for digital download on my website. We are also going to print with it here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll have hard copies that are available for the holidays if you're interested. Ask questions, and then listen. Elizabeth mentioned earlier, ask a question, give them space to come up with the answer. That doesn't change. One of the biggest challenges that I see between parents and teenagers, particularly the older teenagers in the college-bound group, their bodies are almost fully formed. Their brains aren't even close. And so we look at this creature that looks like an almost adult, and we forget that their brain is lagging behind the body. The brain doesn't actually fully develop until mid to late 20s. So when we're engaging with them and we're asking them something, we're expecting responses based on what their outside looks like. And we have to remember that the inside hasn't caught up yet. So that space that she invited you to offer is critical. It's also really valuable to ask the student, when you ask, hey, what's bothering you? What's on your mind? Before you just jump into giving advice, ask them, do you need an ear? Or are you looking for an answer? And frankly, this can really work well in your marital relationships as well, or your adult relationships. Sometimes I just need to vent. I don't want somebody else fixing my problems. I don't want them getting in the middle of it. I just need to get it out because I process things verbally. And my husband, God love him, steps in and tries to fix things. And sometimes I'm like, shut up and listen to me. Our kids feel the same way. So give them the space and ask them, do you need an ear or do you need an answer? Ways that you can do this if you just feel this compulsion to respond. Ask, oh yeah? What do you mean by that? Tell me more. Or you can even go a step further and say, do you mean to say, and then put a summary in. And make that way it reflects back to them that maybe they didn't actually say what they meant, but that's what you received. So it gives them another opportunity to clarify. All right, let's talk timelines and timeliness for college. If your kiddo is college bound, there are absolutely timelines that you need to pay attention to. So this is a bit of a redux because it never hurts to say it 2 or 3 or 4 times. These are, this actually is a repeat of what we talked about in our 3rd workshop of just some big picture, quarter by quarter things to pay attention to with kids as early as junior year. So for those of you who have kiddos who are younger than juniors, just so that you know, 9th and 10th grade grades absolutely do matter for college admissions. Once we get to, there's my reminder time-wise. Once we get to junior year though, like end of sophomore year, that's when we really need to be thinking about putting action into place for the college admissions process. That's the earliest that I recommend that you do SAT or ACT prep. And here's what I want you to understand. Like again, the fall of junior year, fall of senior year, not overly different, but fall of senior year is when college applications really do start becoming real. If you're planning for your kiddo to take SAT or ACT, these are the current dates based on 2021, 2022 calendars. And as a general rule of thumb, you want to be aiming to have your kiddos' college applications submitted no later than Thanksgiving of their senior year. So with all of that, here's what I want you to keep in mind. Yes, grades are a piece of the puzzle, 100%. So are jobs, so are volunteering, so are their extracurricular activities. Colleges do not want exclusively scholarly students. They want students who also have taken the time to explore, to learn about themselves. And oh, by the way, they want students who can pay attention to deadlines. Deadlines are hard deadlines. when it comes to registering for the exams, when it comes to submitting applications, 100% deadlines count. So you've got to pay attention to the timelines. And this is really an opportunity to guide, to mentor, to coach your kiddo in the project planning process. So sit down and go, hey, if we're aiming to take the SAT on X date, we need to work backwards, and we need to be thinking of like in advance of when we need to be taking a practice test, when we need to be looking for a professional, those kinds of things. So this is something that is even more important. It has much higher stakes, negative outcomes if we don't coach our kids well here. All right. Again, I recommend setting appointments, as the other ladies have mentioned, set times every week, every couple of weeks that are just focused on the college admissions process to help make sure that we're staying on top of things. Because, man, I have absolutely seen kids not get accepted because they missed a deadline or miss out on scholarships that I was confident they would have qualified for when they didn't hit the deadline. Last bit I want to offer to you is, please don't be afraid to bring in professional support. As an adult, as somebody who manages your home, or as somebody who works in a professional space, you do not live in isolation. You have other people that you hire to do things for you. Whether it's you hire a professional to come in and clean your house, whether it's you hire a professional to build you a new home, whether it's you hire an auto broker to help you buy a new car. There are professionals like Deborah and Elizabeth and me who are here specifically to help you. Reach out to financial planners who can help you with the financial side of college. If your kid starts a job, get them in with a financial planner immediately so that they can start investing. If you are looking for support on the college admissions side, or tutoring, or an IEP advocate, for example, to help you navigate and know what questions to ask, hire them. This is part of what I do at Parent Tween Connection, is I pull together some of those professionals. The last thing I want to mention that is really important as your kids head on to college. According to the letter of the law in this country, 18 years old signifies legal adult. And there are some very important legal things that you need to pay attention to. Please be clear, I am not an attorney. This is not meant to be a legal advice. You need to speak with an attorney when your kid is approaching 18 to discuss two really important things. Number one, a medical power of attorney. God forbid something were to happen to your child once they're off at college. Because of HIPAA laws, medical professionals cannot necessarily call you directly. Same thing with financial power of attorney. If your kid has bills and they become incapacitated, however, temporarily or not, in order for a bank to be able to grant you access to their accounts, you do have to have a financial power of attorney. So please do reach out to an attorney in your state for that. Lastly, college grades. Yes, they're your kid. Yes, you may be paying tuition. No, you don't get to see their grades. That is a law, and you would be amazed at how many parents are shocked by that. So that is a conversation you need to have with your kiddo before they head off to college, to be like, hey, there is a form that the registrar or the bursar, not the bursar, somebody in the college, it can vary from location to location or school to school, but there is a form that your child can fill out that allows you access to their grades if they choose to let you see them. But remember, according to the law in this country, if they are 18, they do not have to grant you that privilege. So the more you focus on the relationship now, the less likely you're going to be that your kid says, peace out, I'm never going to share my grades with you again because it's been such a traumatic experience, or whatever the case may be. And the more you focus on the relationship and establishing that you're here to guide them, the more likely you're going to be that they continue to come to you for that guidance as they get older. With that, whoop, I went the wrong way. If you are interested, I have a few episodes of our podcast that were launched earlier this summer. We've got more coming. If you would like a copy of our Foundations of Connection, which is the core of my signature coaching program myself, you can download that on our website. And Parent Tween University meets the second Sunday of each month. If you are interested, my special offer for you is 50% off for 3 months. Our next meeting is November 14th. And with that, I'm going to say Oh, I forgot to update your offer here, Elizabeth, on the CAPE program. I will update that in a follow-up email that I send out. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and kill the recording, say thank you for joining us, and open it up to any questions for folks who are here with us live.